Hello and welcome to another Retfurb video. On today's video I'm going to re-upholster this Selle Italia Flite titanium gel seat. I've got some brown leather hide that I had for a previous job and I'm going to attempt to use that on this, although it's I think about 2mm thick, which is actually quite thick for something like this. You ideally want about 1mm, but I thought I'd have a go, see what happens, see how formable it is, and obviously as you'll see the process going along you'll see the difficulties I had using the leather, which is a bit thicker. I'm sure there's other techniques that probably people use that can make it form better than I have on this, but I'm just going to do the normal process that I did on a similar seat and hopefully it will turn out okay. As you can see, this seat wasn't in the best of conditions. It had a hole on one of the sides and it's just generally worn down, so it's an ideal seat to do this to. Obviously with the gel underneath you will see that when the new leather is put on top you'll see the impressions underneath. So that's just the way it is, because obviously it's got the gel sections in, you can't really hide that. So all I'm doing at the moment with the seat, I'm just peeling off the leather around the edges and then I'm just peeling out any staples that are there, just trying to make sure there's none left in before I fit the new leather or go any further. This seat leather covering was on there pretty well. It took quite a bit to get it off. As you can see, I was messing around with it quite a bit. I had to get the pliers on it to lever it out. So yeah, it was sort of stuck on a lot more better than the last one I did. Now at this point, when I'm starting to peel it off the foam, I just want to be careful that I don't peel any foam off with it. It just makes it a lot harder to sort out afterwards. You've then got to sand it down and try and smooth out those bits where you've pulled the foam out. So if I can do it without doing that, which it looks like I probably will, then it makes it a lot easier. I don't have to do that much prep work afterwards to put the leather on top. So that came out really well. There's minimal amount of foam that came off, so it won't need any more prep work before I go any further. So now on the bottom of the leather there's some small foam sections that I'm going to take off and then use them again to go over the gel parts on the seat. Now here I'm just wrapping the new leather over the top of it just to see what it will look like with the impressions underneath. I was sort of on the fence a little bit whether to use those foam pads or whether to not use them, but I think it was better with them. You will get the impression shown through, but it looks okay, so yeah, we're going to go with that. Here I'm just cutting the piece that I need from the leather, just using the old part as a template, just making it a bit bigger so I've got more than enough to move around. Now to apply some adhesive to these foam sections and then I can fit them first before fitting the leather. This is just a basic can of spray contact adhesive that is from Screwfix, which is in the UK. I'm not sure if they have it in any other countries, but this is the one that I've decided to use. So with this sort of contact adhesive, it's best to let it tack off first before applying it. It just gives it that better grip initially when you put it on, rather than if you put it on too wet, it won't stick straight away. So if you let it tack off on the surface and then put the two bits together, it helps it stick quicker. If you want to be able to move it a little bit first, then put it on sooner. And now I'm going to apply the adhesive to the seat itself and then also the back of the leather, and then let them tack off slightly before I fit them together. Now you could mask off the underside of the seat if you wanted to at this point. The only reason I don't like doing that, which I said in the previous video that I did when I covered a seat, is the problem is if you cover it with masking sheet and then you start spraying the adhesive on and then fitting the leather, the problem you'll get is the leather will try to stick to the masking sheet or the paper and then you'll get in all sorts of kind of mess. So for me, I think this is a better option, and then I'll just clean it up with some solvent-based panel wipe, which is okay. It doesn't hurt the leather in any way. The one that I use is pretty sort of safe for that. So that'll clean off all the adhesive that's on the underside on the rails and the plastic. And this is the easiest way I find of doing it. So you'll see in the video that I've started covering the seat with the leather now. I'm trying to pull it tight as I'm doing it, so it forms around the shape better. This will obviously come more into play when I'm pulling it around the edges on some of the corner parts that are tighter, especially with the thicker leather, trying to get that around without creasing it too much. Now that I've got to this stage, I'm just going to start trimming a bit of the leather off, just so I haven't got too much in the area whilst I'm trying to work it round. It'll just make it a little bit easier to go forward. When you've got too much leather, it's hard to then sort of wrap it around the edges without having too much in the way. Throughout the video, you notice I apply more adhesive in some of the areas. Some of it didn't have as much on from the start, but it will also need reapplying when you're pulling it on and off. You don't obviously want to put loads on there at once because it might clump up, so just put a little bit on, then you can work that area and then move on to the next part. You can see at this point how much leather there is and how much needs losing. With the thicker leather, it makes it a lot harder. I wouldn't recommend really using leather this thick on it. You can see just how hard it was for me to try and get rid of it. I just keep trying to work round, just carefully putting it in place and keep manipulating it as best I can to lose as much creasing as possible. Whilst I continue to do this, I just thought I'd mention I do have another seat to do, which I'm going to buy some different leather for that one. I'm not going to use this brown leather. I was intending to do them both in the brown leather. However, after doing this one, I've decided not to. So yeah, I'm not sure what colour I'm going to do it yet. I might go for something completely different, but that's another Selle Italia seat, but it's a turbo version. That one should be a little bit different than doing these ones. I've done probably about 4 or 5 Selle Italia Flite seats now. Obviously one of the other videos was on previously, which I showed doing that one in a black leather and just trying to make it look original. This one I've gone a bit different with the brown, and then when I do the lettering you'll see that that's done differently, just as a bit of an experiment more than anything. So looking back at this seat, you can see that I'm gradually managing to get the leather to smooth out as best as I can. You're going to get a bit there, it's inevitable with this thickness, but if I can get it as smooth as possible, I think it will look presentable. And now I'm just trimming off some of the excess around the parts underneath the seat. This will make it look a lot better straight away when these bits come off. Again, not being shy with putting more adhesive on, this will be required as you go along. Here again, I'm just trimming off some of the excess leather to make it more easy to manipulate around the edges. Obviously this part will need it trimmed to go underneath the rails. It's where it sits underneath, there's sort of a ridge, So if you put too much, it'll come out of that ridge, so you just need to trim it to make sure it sits into it. You can see here it's gradually taking shape. The worst is yet to come though. The nose part is obviously going to be a lot more fiddly to do. It's a lot tighter, that curve, and just trying to get it under there is going to be a nightmare. So yeah, the back part was probably a lot easier compared to that, but hopefully we'll get it all right. And now more trimming underneath the seat on the opposite side now on the back. Here you can see exactly what I mean by trying to lose that amount of leather around these corners. Just the amount on that area is hard to try and smooth out, trying to pull it tight as I can, and just keep manipulating it round to get as many of those wrinkles out as possible. Obviously on the underside of the seat it doesn't matter too much. You want to try and get it as smooth as you can though, so the adhesive sticks better. But if it's a bit wrinkly underneath, it's not the end of the world. It's just what you see from the outside. So on the sides and the top and the back, you know, if you can get it so it looks presentable there, that's the main thing really. Now that the back end's all but finished, it will need smoothing a little bit more. We can now move to the side section and then onto the front eventually. Just trimming off any excess again on the side to help it fold in easier. Here I'm just looking, trying to decide the best way to go forward with this section, making sure that I've just trimmed enough off before I start folding it in. So again, just as another side note, I thought I'd mention a couple of other items which I'm planning to do on the video. I've got a couple of World War II items that ordinarily I wouldn't sort of get involved in restoring, but as they were items that were quite heavily damaged, and one of them being not worth a lot anyway, I thought it'd be nice to restore them as close to the original as I can. Like I say, if it was just mildly sort of deteriorated or marked just from use, then I wouldn't even touch them. Obviously it's nice to keep them as they were, but one of the items, which is a field telephone, that one someone's tried to take a wire brush to it at some point, and it looks like they might have painted the underside of it at some point as well, so that one I'm going to redo. I've got a set of World War II German gunner sunglasses which I thought were quite interesting, so these ones again not in the great condition. They're worth quite a bit of money when they're all up together, but these ones were cracked. The straps have come off of it, so again I'm not too worried. I'll get involved in doing that. If they were all together then I wouldn't touch them again. So I've got those two items which are going to be coming up. Also I've got an old vintage household fan, which is a British made limit fan. So that one will be on here. I'm not exactly sure the age of it at the moment. I think it might be 50s, but I'm not 100% sure. I need to look into that, but once that video comes up, hopefully I'll have a bit more information there. So back to this video in the seat, you can see that I've started folding that front end in. You can see that it took a little bit of messing around with quite a bit of the video I've cut off just to save a bit of time, but it took a little bit of pulling around, manipulation. I'd apply glue a couple of times, and now at this point I'm just trying to push it in with the head of a screwdriver to get it to sit nice and flush on the inside. So as you can see, the main part is now done, the leather's fitted. It's not perfect by any means because of the thicker leather, but I'm quite happy with how it turned out considering how tricky it was to try and get that round. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm sure people know of ways of doing it a lot easier, and they probably could have manipulated this thicker leather better. But as it was in the technique that I've used, I've got it as good as I can for this part. Now on to applying the decals. These are done out of heat press vinyl, so I'm going to use the same technique as I did with the last seat, using an iron to press these onto the seat, and then that'll give them a permanent adhesion. I used orange. I just thought I would go for something different, so the orange on the brown. And also this orange has got like a white backing, so when you heat it a little bit more, the white is exposed around the edges, which I thought I would just try and see how it come out. Ordinarily I don't like using this orange film purely because of that white shows through sometimes. Most of the other heat vinyl that I've got is a solid colour and you don't have the white backing, which is much better. What I like to do with this heat press vinyl is after I do it initially, I then peel the plastic backing off and then use the Teflon sheet to go over it again, just to give it another sort of heat press, not going too long. I think this is rated at about 15 seconds, but obviously that's with a proper heat press doing it. With an iron it's slightly different. And as you can see, when you do it, you can see on this the white outline from the underside of the film. So with a solid colour film where it's the whole colour all the way through, you won't get this, but on this orange sheet, like I said previously, you've got a white backing, so you've got the orange at the front, so when you press it you always get this sort of outline. So that's it, the seat's all done. I think it came out pretty well considering. I do actually like the colour of the brown leather, although I wouldn't go for 2mm again. I think I would go for 1mm thick like I did on the previous one. Yes, this will probably be harder wearing, but you just don't get it so smooth around the edges. It didn't turn out too bad. With the decals, with the orange and the brown, I thought it looked quite nice, you know, something a bit different. Obviously it's not an original look, but yeah, it gives it a nice fresh different look to it. So yeah, another refurb done. Thanks again for taking the time to watch the video, it's really appreciated. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.